My name is John Kimayo, and I'm 25 years old. I come from the Kalenjin community in Kenya. In this community, it is customary for women to get married and depend on their partners for livelihoods and income. I'm here today to share my story, a story that is very close to my heart. Many years ago, when my siblings and I were very young, my mother lost her husband and her job. She was given a piece of land to farm by her parents so that she can be able to take care of us. We had food and we had good education. But we were not aware of what our mother was going through. Her own family, her two brothers and uncles, all with stable income, demanded that she give up her land so that they could take over. 20 years on, nothing has changed. Our father inherited a very big piece of land, and this land now belongs to my brothers and my uncles automatically. I am not entitled to a share of this land. And if I, a legitimate daughter, wanted a share of this land, I would have to fight my own family. And clearly the law of Kenya states that inherited land should be equally divided amongst their heirs, regardless of gender. Yet, this is not recognized in my culture. And while the situation varies across countries in Africa, I know that women and young people like me are facing similar challenges. But I'm here today to share my story and invite others to share theirs too. So to all people listening now, let's take a moment and reflect on our situation. Are you a farmer, a pastoralist, a woman, a young person? And are you struggling to get land access? I hear you. Let's continue this important conversation to identify solutions that best fit the needs and interests of all parties involved. And to all men, change cannot happen without your support. Every involved individual has the power to stop business as usual and to change the narrative. I invite you all to talk to your brothers, to your sons, and share the importance of achieving gender equal and land rights. I invite you all to talk to your sisters, to your daughters, and let them know that you support their independence. And last but not definitely least, to all young women like me, change will only start with us. Every country's, every community's situation for sure is unique. Yet the challenges that we face are similar. So go ahead, share your stories, connect with groups or organizations on land rights, or even you can start your own community. And let's do our best to support each other and lead the change. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I am Diana Chalo from Kenya, the founder and writer of Land Pages. Land Pages is a blog that discusses topical issues on land within the African continent. Africa is a young continent. Majority of its population is made up of the youth. Other factors like urbanization and climate change continue to exert more pressure on the demand for land. Land tenure system in Africa is a very unique yet complex system. Different countries within the continent will recognize different forms of tenure to varying degrees. However, a customary land holding system remains one of the most dominant tenure system within the continent. To own land, most African youth depend on inheritance, allocation within the customary land, sometimes allocation from government, and others are fortunate enough to purchase land. The nature and complexity of our land holding systems attracts its own sets of challenges. I am not saying that they are bad systems, I'm just saying they have their own unique challenges and they can be addressed. However, these challenges tend to affect women and young people disproportionately than they would affect their male counterparts. For example, Our cultural practices in most communities are very patriarchal, so they tend to work to a disadvantage of the women and also the young people. For the longest, African countries' legal frameworks were not clear on youth land rights and the involvement of youth in land governance. With that brief overview, I am very excited to be part of this dialogue. It's my hope that we are going to find sustainable solutions and quickly. Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the first plenary of the day, an intergenerational dialogue to explore solutions to land tenure challenges, co-hosted by GLF, Global Landscapes Forum, and Robert Bosch Foundation, in collaboration with the Youth in Landscapes Initiative. My name is June, and I'll be moderating this session. So land tenure is a delicate topic. It affects different people across the continent. As we heard from Diana, women and youth in particular. And in dryland specific context, women and people are often part of pastoralist community whose livelihoods and income depend on the land. But limited availability of communal land and challenges to formal ownership are increasingly creating tension between the different groups, including the pastoralists, the farmers, and investors. While formal land security in Africa is increasing, the number of land disputes is also on the rise. Women and the youth often losing the land. And as with every conflict, it is key to make space for people to communicate about these needs and feelings while listening and understanding each other. That is why today we want to hear from different groups about these challenges they face, the feelings, challenges they face, the feelings they have, and the opportunities they identify with. Our speakers will first let us in their world, guiding us through a map of what they see, what they hear, what they think and do in their landscapes and communities, and will then contribute to their perspective and knowledge to a plenary conversation. And that said, please join me in welcoming our speakers. We will first hear from Amina Aden Malim. Amina is an agroforester and a pastoralist by lifestyle, coming from the Somali pastoralist community in Garissa County from the northern part of Kenya. She has also had experiences working with the Fulani pastoralists in Ghana during her master's research. Amina will be followed by Sheikh Abdel Kader Baba, the country program manager and research associate at TNG Research, also representing the pastoralist communities. After the first view of pastoralists, we will hear from Elizabeth Mpofu, a small-scale organic farmer, a writer, an activist, and the general coordinator of the Via Campesina. And last but not definitely least, we will hear from the amazing Diana Kialo, whom you've already met through the video, who will share with us more about the way young people and women face land tenure challenges. With no further ado, Amina, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, the speakers. Delving right into the issue, the survival of the livestock, which is the livelihood and the families of the pastoralists, is in question. And this is because of the population increase, there is need to change the land use systems that are there. More pastoralists will move into the ranges, and mind you, they're also keeping large herds of animals. So will the forage that is available there able to sustain the livestock and feed the livestock that are there? So there will be the issue of overstocking, land use changes, and the carrying capacity issue. And then there is the issue of that results into conflict. And nowadays, we even have a new group that has introduced itself into this conflict. Initially, we used to have farmers and pastoralists. Now, because of unemployment, charcoal production is becoming also another sort of land use system, which is bringing more challenge. And then we have these weak community structures that are enhancing politically fueled conflicts. And this is because of the boundary issues. Because of this dry season grazings, the drought takes longer period. And this allows farmers, the pastoralists, to trespass into the pastoral lands and start destroying, neglecting the rules and understandings that were there, and all they care about is they need to get feed for their animals. And that actually aggravates the conflicts that have been existing. And then we are doomed. The resources itself is dwindling, and that the youth and who have been taking care of the animals initially are now moving into the urban to get better jobs and employment opportunities. Therefore, we believe that people are doomed, so therefore they need to get an alternative source of livelihood. And which kind of livelihood are they talking about? We have introduced systems now. They have adopted sedentarization as some sort of a lifestyle, whereby they can only move during the dry season, and in the wet season they can graze their animals around homes, and they can get some farming activities, or they can sell their animals who have been large numbers, and then start some sort of a livelihood creation where they can start sell animals and create some sort of a startup business where they buy a shop and even other ventures. And then agro-pastoralism. They do a bit of farming, just like vegetable farming, so that it can sustain the family. And also a very good thing that has come up in the community is women are taking up even startup business ventures. We have the camel, which is the pride of the Somali community. So the products of the livestock, which is the milk and the meat, is value added now into producing producing better products that are sold domestically and internationally. And having the discovery of the camel milk, having the treatment to be able to provide treatment of autism, it has actually gained more global attention. And then these natural and human cost shocks have been coupled with high illiteracy. The rangers are exposed to these natural and human cost shocks, and this can be droughts, locusts, floods, bushfires, conflicts, and all that. So what have we been doing? Like the young boys who have been looking after the animals and have been denied the chance to education are currently being included in the education system, and parents are becoming a bit flexible. And also the inclusion of livestock production and into the curriculum of the universities in here, so that local livelihood is captured in the education system. And the opportunities being provided is we are strengthening the youth and women leadership. The youth and women, this is avoiding radicalization and youth engagement of the youth. So the government is introducing formation of community interest groups that can actually redirect the youth issue into engagement in more serious livelihood generation activities, and also provision of hardware and equipment for the women who are venturing into this into the business of value addition of livestock products. And there is also the strengthening of community structures, so that they can reduce this boundary conflicts, and then the resources can be shared, and they can design every season grazing parcels of land. Over to you, Abdikadir.
Thanks, Amina. Farmers and pastoralists used to be like siblings, sharing the same land and landscape to meet their livelihoods. Land and farming activities used to unify them. Today, economic gains, financial profits, and the growing insanity of land ownership across the world dislocate families, disrupt synergies, and blow away intergenerational ties that used to unify farmers and pastoralists. I see an ever-shrinking space for pastoralism. I also see pastoralist camps burning and young girls and boys suddenly distress and loss. I hear pastoralist families screaming in silence, since no one sees their pain anyhow. I see and I feel the pain of women and youth as expelled from the land on which they used to live and where their parents were born. Yes, pastoralists need to self-criticize different attitudes. Yes, pastoralists need to adapt to the ever-changing environment. But stereotypes and negative resentment on pastoralists is very disturbing. Whether carried by simple words such as pastoralists are like wind, or our farms are not moving, pastoralists are moving, or even worse, by media, sharing and commenting abundantly incidents involving pastoralists, the result is the same. Pastoralists are perpetrators and others are victims. At every scale, coordinated programs and strategies are urgently needed to fight stereotypes, promote dialogue, and work together. Thanks.
As a woman
The land
representative,
itself not a guarantee
as a
of
woman
economic
farmer,
development, but also a
I'm
very
going to
necessary
focus
condition for a more
intervention
secure and
on the
sustainable,
Kenya
balanced community. Lastly,
looking at the
administration, land remains the basic
rather than
source of
land management.
livelihoods for the majority.
Secondly,
The land itself not a guarantee of economic development, but also a very necessary condition for a more secure and sustainable, balanced community. Lastly, land remains the basic source of livelihoods for the majority of us. Those on top or on governance, the policymakers, they are focusing on land administration, forgetting that land management and the full utilization is the key. Yes, we appreciate the land reform, but I'm not contented with the lease policy agreement, even if I'm one of the beneficiaries of the land reform program. Not all women have access to own land, and in urban centers, the land is very expensive. Only a few rich and upper class can afford to own land in urban areas, and also that is where the title deeds are offered. One of the solutions which we might think is very important is the need to engage with the policymakers, with our local traditional leaders, and discuss, tell them our grievances, what we think is also important to be done in regards of the land tenure issues. As women, we feel that the patriarchal system will never come to an end. So during the dialogues, this is where we can really try to highlight all the issues, the conflicts which are happening, and together we can come up with strategies and solutions to solve the problems. Thank you.
I feel underrepresented. But before that, I notice things around me. I see that we are constantly developing land. We are also subdividing our plots into very tiny and sometimes not viable plots. I notice that our riverbanks are slowly wasting away, and they was at some point a key aspect of our boundaries. I also noticed that our indigenous forests are clearing up. I noticed that we are taking more and more into charcoal burning as a source of livelihood, which is not going to be helpful in a few years' time. And all what I notice is there is increased conflict because of some of our practices. As a young woman, I also hear things, some are not pleasant. I notice some whispers telling me, you're still at home, you're 26, it's time to shush and go. I also notice that we are constantly seeking education as an alternative to make girls look for make a better life elsewhere. But that is not always the situation. Not everyone will be privileged enough to go on that route. Sometimes you just want to stay home and be safe. I also noticed the international community telling me that youth are the future of tomorrow. But when I go back to my village, that voice sometimes is shunned. I can't speak loud about it. What does that make me feel? Sometimes I feel frustrated. I don't know where to start. But what matters to me is I want safety, equity, and equality to improve our livelihoods on land. I want women to be allowed to own and feel secure within their own rights. At local and clan level, I feel like women have been underrepresented. I feel like when I have a woman and a young woman representing me at customary land arrangements, then my thoughts and my feelings will be represented. I also feel like we are taking our sweet time in addressing the climate change vulnerabilities, but the climate change itself is very fast. So what do I do about all these things and emotions around me? At family level, I try to create a dialogue. I try to bridge between generation, the old one and the young one. And within my tiny little space of my website, I decide to blog. I write about land rights. I decide to become a champion for youth and women land rights. I have a hope that we can leverage on innovative and affordable approaches. I feel like we can build capacities from ground up, and I still have hope for tomorrow. Over to you, June.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing with us, for opening up to us and being vulnerable and sharing just everything that you feel, that you hear, that you see. It's so amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you. So before starting off with the conversation, we would like to hear from all of you who are joining us, who are participating today on the Hoover platform. So to participate in this session poll, please on the poll tab, where you're streaming from right now, you can check on the tab next to the chat and question and answer. There's some written polls. So there's a question that we'd like you to answer. The question is, what do you think we need to secure? We need to secure land rights. What do we need to do to secure land rights? So in one word, please share with us what you think we need to do in order to secure land rights for all, for everyone. So, and if you're tuning on from social media too, please feel free to answer the same question on the comments. And the question is, what do we need to secure land rights for all? And yeah, wonderful. And while everyone is replying, let me invite our speakers on stage once again. Welcome to the stage, everyone. And also, we are sorry, it's unfortunate that Miss Elizabeth Mpofu was not able to join us live today, but we send a huge thanks for sharing with us the video and for opening up to us. Thank you so much, Miss Elizabeth. Now we would like to go into the plenary discussion. And thank you so much again, Kader, Amina, and Diana for contributing to this important conversation. So now, before going to the conversation, we would like to read the responses from our participants. Yeah. We'd like to read the responses from all our participants, what they've shared on the Hoover poll. Okay, so, we'll read that later. I think now we would go straight to Amina. And I would ask this question to all of you, the speakers, but we'll start with Amina. What do you think are the new approaches or changes at a systematic level that are needed to transform the conflicts in our communities and to transform these conflicts into opportunities in our communities? Amina? to you.
Thank you, John. First of all, I would like to believe a dialogue will be the best opportunity for reducing these conflicts so that the farmers and the pastoralists are in agreement that pastoralists should not intrude into the into the farmers' land. And then we have these structures that at the lower community level that have been engaged in ensuring the resources are used per season. Like during the wet season, we have the forage and the fodder being available. But what about who uses, when do they use, and who allows them to use? That is something that needs really strengthening at the community level. Permission should also be given to those who don't come from that area but are bringing their livestock from the different parts of the drylands, and they come from another town or another village, but they want to access the resources that are there. Also, another opportunity is how about we introduce other non-land related opportunities that takes pressure off the issue of conflict. How, like in Kenya, the government is giving small capital to the pastoralists and the young people so that they engage themselves in income generating activities, like this value addition of the camel milk and meat and goat. There's a specific variety of goat production, and also farming itself. They're given money to start the farming. So all they need is to form groups and then register them so that they make a case for getting that funding. And the issue of land is a bit sensitive. How do we who knows, and when is the right time you'll be given that land? Like the old people, they like owning that land, and transferring that ownership to the young people takes time. It's like they don't have the experience, so it's the youth to fight for that recognition and getting the right amount of experience and knowledge throughout their life so that they can make a better ownership of this land. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amina. Such a nice overview. So next we'd like to ask Diana and Kader to answer the same question, which is what are the new approaches or changes at a systematic level that we need in order to transform these conflicts in the communities into opportunities? In 2 minutes, each of you, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, each of you could answer or could discuss, could just say what they feel, what their opinion is about these approaches.
I feel like we need to continue doing sensitization and extreme on community mobilization, because especially to bridge the gap between the young and the old, because you have to explain to my grandfather, my granddad, why is this land important to me before he accepts to give it to me and ensure that I have security while using it. So we need to continuously have community sensitization, and also we need to use approaches which are fit for purpose for our unique challenges. Each community has their own unique challenges, so we need to address this issue with a fit for purpose for that community and not assume that one fits all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I think as you said, not every solution fits every community, and I think that is something that everyone needs to really put in mind. So Kader, do you mind also taking us through the same question?
Yeah, thanks. I think I will not come back on what Diana and Amina said, which I fully agree with. There are a lot of things we can do, like at national level, at a regional level, at local level. But I want to insist on the fact that the conflict that we have today between pastoralists and the issue that we have is also determined somehow by the paradigm and the polarization of discussion around the impact of pastoralism. If you all remember, always pastoralism activities are associated with degradation, with trouble, with conflict. And I think the scientific community need to take it into account, because scientific findings and paradigms often influence the flow of investment. And so far, pastoralists did not benefit from the whole band of investment like other fields. It's really important that we revise the paradigms, and I do hope that with the global atlas that have been published like last week, I think, it may build a momentum to shift and to change our thinking and to look at pastoralism with other lenses. That is important to gather the investment that we need to revise all the discourse and to build corridors and all these things. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kader. Thank you. Let's move on to the next question, which is, in this, and also this is to all of you, and please answer it or like, share your overview or your opinion in two minutes or less. So we know that women have for years faced a lot of inequalities when it comes to land tenure. So how can we move inclusive land tenure for all, including young women who want to own a piece of land? So the question is, how can we move inclusive land tenure for all, including young women who want to own a piece of land? And this time we'll start with you, Diana.
Thank you very much, June. I am a young woman myself. I feel like before we even go to the part of owning land, can we also ensure that my other basic rights, like right to use, right to have recreational rights on the land, are already protected and acknowledged? Then, to me, owning the land, am I owning through inheritance? Can we also have inclusion at the tables that matter, at clan level, at community level, and have young female representing us there and saying, yes, it is important for this young girl to have land. Why? Because of A, B, C, D, and Z. That way, then my rights through customary can be acknowledged and passed through me without any complaints.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing with us your. So, Kader, maybe we can hear from you.
I think a lot of reforms are ongoing, and it will be important to continue the reforms, like in legislation in our countries. But sometimes the imbalance in access to land is beyond the politics. It's really need like an open dialogue and discussion with all the family, because sometimes we are talking about like what Diana shared some minutes ago. She will need to fight her own family to earn a piece of land, and this is the critical aspect where sometimes even policy reforms cannot be effective, because this is about the family. And we probably need to build much more advocacy groups, lobbying, but while being careful not to disrupt the basis of the family. Because when it comes to the family, even women sometimes are shy to take action. So that's why dialogue and like conversation is important.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kader. And I think, when you said about now, sometimes even women in their own families are shy to stand up for themselves. And I think that is true. And we need to also encourage and empower these women to get on their feet and, stand up for themselves. So, Amina, we would like to hear from you.
Thank you. First of all, we Africans, we learn we believe by seeing things. If a young woman would have, within a specific setting or a community, if a young woman has had a land and then she has used that land to demonstrate some sort of a technology and it has really worked, that would make a case for engaging more women. People would see the benefits that she has accrued from that land she had used, and would encourage more women to be doing such things, but they're not given that platform to even own that land. So women are kind of nowadays becoming smart enough to be engaging in this small weekly or monthly investments, we call them merry-go-rounds, And even these small businesses of selling, the men live with the animals, so the women are left behind. So they are made more resilient, and they start taking up these small businesses, whether they sell the milk, whether they just put aside something small. Even if they buy land, they won't buy a big piece of land because it's very expensive. They might buy a small piece of land. Then also for them to get the right to own land and to even use land, it depends on the head of the family. Is he flexible? Is he aware? Is he somebody who is educated enough to be able to give that land to to the women in the family? And also, let's not also ignore the cultural norms and attitudes towards women owning land. It's some sort of a pride. Their traditional beliefs. And then if people are shown technologies that have done really well, women have used the land, then that attitude can change up, because it's something and that can even transform the lifestyle of the families.
Thank you so much, Amina, Diana, and Kader. Yeah, it's also nice to hear that women are now becoming resilient and becoming smart and starting to join these groups and working together to even buy themselves land. Yeah, so thank you so much. And now we would like to hear about the youth. So the youth can play a huge role in changing the current situation if allowed, if given the opportunity. So what do you think the new generation our generation could do to change things? And what do you think is needed to be sure that they are enabled to do that? So what do you think the youth, we can do to change everything that is happening when it comes to this land rights issue? And what do you think is needed to be done so that we can be able to do it? So Kader, would you like to start us today now?
Yeah, I will give it a try, because I strongly believe that youth are tomorrow's leaders and also the key decision makers who will play a huge role in the change of paradigm and the actions to be made for, let's say, a better life. But it's important that we all understand, when you talk about pastoralism, for example, that mobility is crucial. In a situation, in a context where we are all fighting now for open market, for free movement of goods and people, we should also understand that we need to open up corridors around the countries from the Sahel to the tropical regions to allow farmers to continue, pastoralists to continue freely their activities. And I strongly believe that youth today, with all the technologies at their disposal, can really play a role and contribute to make this transhumance, the pastoral and the movement of livestock and people, much more secure and with less conflict. We just need to give them the leadership to put at their disposal the resources to do it, and I'm quite sure they can do it. And here I'm calling again the international community to move from these polarized debates to give the leadership and increase the flow of investment, to recognize that mobility is crucial, but it can also be done safely with minimum damage for farmers and other communities.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kader. I think we'd quickly move to Diana and then Amina. Yeah.
I think we youth have to educate ourselves. We also need to be able to be present and participate. For instance, if a chief at your local level asks for a forum for us to come and discuss things like conflict, avail yourself, learn from the elder people in your community. And as Kadara said, the international community to avail funding to create hubs which will allow youth to come up with innovative and affordable solutions for the problems they know best. It will be very good for me to solve a problem which I've gone through since my childhood up to date than for someone to come from another region to help me solve it. I know my challenges best. So it's mostly be present, participate, and continuously educate yourself on the challenges within your community. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Diana. That's a very good point. Personally, I believe we don't take the youth and the women as outsiders, and we include them and we let them participate in key decision-making processes. And this can benefit them in two ways. And I've personally taken part in such processes. And when you bring them together with the elders, there is a tendency of mentoring them. They understand what have been working, what is it that the people have been doing previously, is it working well now, what has changed? If there is any change, how do we now adapt and change into this and be firm now in taking heads on with this new solution? So now the aged people will transfer that knowledge to the youth, who will now become future leaders of that. Their voices will be heard and will be included in those decisions. And personally, I've experienced this. I have a restoration project that is, I'm doing an adaptive collaborative research, which I'm working with the community. And I've managed to get the old people, the young people, both women and both ladies and gentlemen. And then we have the mothers also as well. So it has representation from everywhere. And I cannot just come and introduce technologies, or I cannot tell them to plant trees that I think of. They have to tell me what trees are important to them so that I can bring trees that will be taken care of and will be beneficial to them. So now when these people are, the youth and the people are aware of their role in decision making, they will tend to now scrutinize whatever comes in their way or whatever that is brought into the area. Does this really address the problem of my community? If it doesn't, you tell the person, can we now redirect or rearrange whatever you've come up with to fit into our needs now, because it's them making those decisions. And then there are very many opportunities at the disposal of the youth. Can they now realign whatever opportunities are given to fit into also their own dreams and future ambitions? So now they become well-rounded leaders later on. And I also believe sometimes the kind of leaders we elect or we bring into the system also make critical contribution to how the leaders become. Imagine you get resources and this person has someone whom he feels like he can showcase to the outside world, and that person doesn't have the capacity to even do it. Instead of bringing even somebody with that capacity to come and mentor that person, so that it's not, interest driven, but it's something that can, even though it's very small investment, it can be used to make a very good thing that is people who are passionate are behind it and can prosper. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for your views. And from what I've get is the youth should be present. The youth should be able to participate in these events and to keep themselves active so that they can be able to understand and know how to do things. And also all this, they should get support from people in terms of being allowed to present themselves instead of someone else presenting themselves, because they understand their problems and they should be able to make these decisions for themselves. Thank you so much. And now time is so unfair. It has to just quickly go so fast. So before closing this plenary, I would like to ask a very last question to all the three of you. So, and if it would be nice if you could keep your answer in like 1 or 2 sentences. So after hearing all these perspectives from you, from Diana, from Amina, and from Kader, And after this short discussion that we've had, in a few words and in your own words, what is your suggestion for people who are struggling for these issues? What would you like advise? What is a message that you give to people who are struggling with these issues? And yeah, and we can hear from Amina and then Kader and then Diana. In your own words, 1 to 2 sentences. Thank you.
Be informed, see what worked, and try the best in replicating what has worked, and don't be overambitious. That's my contribution.
Kader.
Kader.
Let people hear your voice, organize it either in lobbying group or advocacy group, and people will support you from behind.
Thank you. Dana?
I'd say organize and mobilize and learn from best practices, and let's work together.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has heard, be informed, organize, mobilize, and let your voice be heard out there. Thank you so much for the participation, and it was such a wonderful plenary. And we would love to thank our amazing speakers, Kader, Diana, Amina, and Elizabeth in absentia. And also we would like to thank the co-host, the Global Landscapes Forum and Robert Bosch Foundation. And above all, I would like to give a huge thanks to the audience. Thank you so much for interacting in the chat, and let's continue this important conversation on Hoover. Thank you all, and bye.
Bye-bye.
Participant, karibu to everybody. Welcome to all of you to the Roots of Restoration, Sustainability through Community-Based Forest Landscape Restoration. This session is hosted by GIZ Forest for Future and IKI projects funded by BMZ and BMU. My name is Salima Mahmoudou. I am a research associate at the World Resources Institute, and I'll have the pleasure to be your moderator today. As many of you know, in years of implementing landscape restoration activities, it has become clear that comprehensive involvement of local stakeholders in planning, implementation, and reporting processes is essential to the sustainability and success of any regreening efforts. Community-based and driven approaches are also a great potential to empower local structures and community, especially women and youth. As we know, they're the most marginalized groups in these processes. Initiatives such as the AFR 100 and other international programs for restoring degraded landscapes must continue to use this potential to establish vital African landscapes and ecosystem. This session would therefore provide a deep dive into the value added and challenges of establishing community-based forest landscape restoration approaches, while providing you with concrete examples and guidelines on how to make it happen. But to discuss about this important topic, I'll have the pleasure to introduce 5 distinguished guests and panelists that's going to join me in this discussion. We're going to start with Mr. Mamadou Diakité, who's the acting head of the Environmental Sustainability Division at the African Union Development Agency, AUD-NEPAD. He leads AUD-NEPAD's work on the AFR 100 initiative. His face might be familiar to many of you, but as well as agriculture, food security, and environmental issues pertaining to the AUD-NEPAD's agency. We're also joined by Josephine Makweri, who is a senior expert for landscape restoration working for the Forest and Environmental Program at the German Cooperation, GIZ. She's also specialized in soil fertility improvement through agroforestry pathways. Our third panelist is Tabi Jova, who is the CEO of Green Aid and leads 1 billion trees for Africa, an initiative that has planted over 3 million trees, restored 80 hectares, and created 70 green jobs over the past years. Amazing, Tabi. Tabi has also experiences on local communities, forest restoration, ecosystem resiliences, and value chain development. Our fourth panelist that we're very honored to have with us today is Charles Karangwa, who is the regional lead for Forest, Landscape, and Livelihood Program for Africa at IUCN, and also serves at as the country director for Rwanda. Charles has led IUCN's work on landscape restoration and as part of the AFR 100 initiative and the Bond Challenge, engaging both government agency as well as non-state actors to bring Africa's land into restoration and turning our commitments into actions. Last but not least, we have the amazing pleasure to welcome Tony Ronaldo. I know many of you out there knows who Tony is. The life work of Tony has been in the environmental and humanitarian sphere, focusing on forest and landscape restoration and helping farmers becoming self-sufficient. He is widely recognized by many entities for his influential contribution to raise awareness on the impact, efficiency, uptake, simple, low-cost, scalable methods of restoration that we all know as FMNR, Farmers Managed Natural Regeneration. Finally, before we start these amazing sessions with these great 5 panelists, I would like to remind the participants to use your Q&A sections and your chat box on your application, on your computer, because we want to hear from you. We want to have your reactions, your comments, your objections. We want to hear from you throughout this whole session. And please remember that translation is available in French and in English to facilitate and accommodate all participants. That being said, I would love to start our discussions directly kicking it in with a question to you, Mamadou, helping us set the stage for this discussion. Mamadou, from your experience, what are the necessary frameworks, conditions for a successful community participation, forest and landscape restoration?
Yes, thank you very much, Amina, and welcome. And also thank you to GLF for giving AFR 100 this opportunity. And I will be also want also to recognize AUDA, NEPAD, and all partnerships, financial, technical, of the AFR 100 initiative. And the question you asked is really at the center, at the core of all our work. Including the last week AFR 100 annual partnership meeting that we managed to organize in Kigali. I think one of the main question or tools is to see how to bring African smallholder farmers, which constitute, it might be surprising, the majority of the private sector. When we think private sector, we think big corporations, but African smallholder farmers are the biggest private sector in the agriculture sector, at least in Africa. So one of our challenges and goals is to bring the financial tools, the financial actors to reach the smallholder farmer, because we know that they have issues in accessing loans, in having guarantees. And this is the work we are doing since many years, and we are building the conducive environments for the investment, and we have the support of many government partners, including Germany, including Sweden, through, for instance, the land accelerators initiative that is led by WRI, AUDA, NEPAD, and many other partners to move from restoration as such, but doing business restoration by doing supporting women, youth, to move from only restoration to do business restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamadou, for setting the stage with this information of farmers, smallholder farmers being the primary financiers of this information. Did you know about this? Please put it in the chat. Let us know if you agree with Mamadou. Let us know if you have other thoughts about who can also be great financiers. We're going to continue this conversation with Josephine. Josephine, in your experience working with different communities and working around soil fertility, why should local communities participate in restoration efforts? I think we come into these discussions often thinking that it's obvious, but I want us to allow you to walk us through the process of why should they be focused in these efforts, and what are the different benefits, and how can communities and local stakeholders be included into landscape restoration approaches? Josephine?
Thank you, Salima, and hello to all the panelists and participants. Yeah, why should the local communities participate in restoration efforts? We know that they are the one who have to implement and monitor the activities. So the consultation is a critical initial step. So we have to involve local communities, because we have to identify key stakeholders and their interests. We have to engage them in decision making, because their opinion is very important along the process. And as they are employed in the conception, planning, implementation, and evaluation of the effort, we have to start working with them at the beginning of the process. And we have also to raise their awareness on their community ownership, because they are supposed to be the right holders and the right duty bearers at the end of the process. Overall, we have to enhance their resilience and improve their livelihoods, especially for marginalized groups. What are the benefits they have? They can gain benefits in restoration landscapes, such as social, economic, cultural, and even environmental benefits. With a holistic vision, climate-smart agriculture practices and improved seeds and livelihoods, agroforestry, including farm garden with fruits and silvipasture, developing value chains and access to markets for local products, and also improve foodstuffs that reduce the pressure on forests from fuelwood collection. So they can collect and raise non-timber forest products. They can be employed. That is opportunities for the youths and women, which are really regularly the marginalized group. And finally, they should address the tenure and governance issues. How can communities and local stakeholders be approached? First, we have to analyze the situation. That is the context. What is the concept we are going to work in? We have to map the stakeholders. That is analysis or stakeholder mapping, because communities are the key part for the successful or the failure of the project. We have to establish contact with the community. We have to process on participatory assessment, expectations, time and resources, participatory planning and community mobilization for empowerment. So we have to build the capacity. We have to build a strong community skills, build their awareness and raising in empowerment, foster strong relationship, and finally, we have to keep them involved and supportive. At the end, we have to work with them for a long time in order to attain the level of participation and support so that the successful effort should be raised. That's what I can say for the importance of involving communities in a land-state restoration activities. Thank you, Salima.
Thank you so much, Josephine. We can clearly see that it comes from the heart. Your passion speaks for itself. And if you allow me just to rebound on 1 or 2 points that you've said, we need to make sure that there's local ownership. Involvement is not just participation, it's ownership, it's involvement throughout the whole process, from the planting to the transportation to the value to other parts of the value chain. And one very aspect that you raised is that it's a long process. It's not an in and out type of effort. It takes time, it takes trust, it takes effort. So thank you very much, Josephine, for raising these points. And we will use these points to really introduce Tabi. Tabi, what is the role of underrepresented groups? And in this case, I'm mostly talking about women and youths in FLR efforts. And how can the integration of women and youth be achieved inclusively and successfully into restoration approaches?
Thank you very much, Salima, and thank you for the previous speakers. I want to also use this opportunity first to thank AFR 100, GIZ, and different partners for putting this event and making us really successful in our different projects. We are grateful. And on behalf of the thousands of communities that I work with, I want to say they send their hearty thanks to all of you. And this leads me to why I'm working with communities, because they are the unheard voices. They are the people with ideas that are kept in the wardrobe that needs to be unlocked. And this is very much an important aspect in restoration, because the youth and the women, especially those that are not here with us, they are the custodians. Like Stefan McCoy said, these people, they are not just stakeholders, they are the custodians of the basic knowledge, the basic energies, the basic potentials that are needed down there to unlock the enormous opportunities of restoration. So these are the roles, these are the opportunities of this critical mass of people who are the frontliners with often untapped and unresourced energies and ideas that needs to be tapped and utilized productively and effectively in scaling restoration efforts. These roles are very much in terms of engaging. When we engage these people, we integrate the youth, we put them at the front line and resourcing whatever efforts and activities and contributions they are making. It actually provides the huge opportunity to see restoration efforts scaling even more, developing even more, reproducing even more, and delivering even more value and more impact at different scales and in different other value chains, like economic opportunities for jobs, restoration of the physically degraded landscapes with trees and indigenous foods and materials, and healthy living for communities, and reducing the temptations and vulnerabilities for migrations that we see often, and the absence of rural jobs and absence of well-being. So young people and women are these critical mass of stakeholders, not just beneficiaries, that we need to strongly include them. And that's why we've successfully been able to plant over these 3 million trees and heading towards the target of planting 1 billion trees. Why? Because we actually tap into the resources, the energy, the idea, and the youthfulness of youths and the strategic importance of the women. All these put together constitutes the most often neglected, the most often overlooked resources in restoration. So discussions and including young people and women in the discussions, in the planning processes, actually creates the huge opportunities and brings out the role that they can actually, the role that we need from them in contributing to restoration efforts. I think with that, we can actually say young people, the women in the communities, there are the custodians. We need to bring the custodians into perspective and utilize the resourcefulness very resourcefully and productively for huge restoration to restore the world, especially in delivering on this decade on ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tabby. And I'll take on what you said. We women are the custodians. We cannot say it enough. We are the custodians, whether we're in the cities or specifically when in the local communities. And Tabby, you said something very important, differentiating when we say community. We need to differentiate between the beneficiaries and the entire community that can be involved. So it's not just targeting the beneficiary, but creating and unlocking the potential of entire communities when working in there. Thank you so much for your valuable and insightful advices and really giving us the paving the way into this process. I'd love to jump back to maybe Charles. Charles, given your extensive experiences across Africa, working with various stakeholders and really looking at the different challenges across these stakeholders, can you give us your take on how to integrate local communities in planning and implementation processes of landscape restoration? And what are some existing tools, methodologies, and finally, what are the challenges? What are some of the challenges that you're seeing facing working across these different stakeholders to really integrate local communities into landscape restoration?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to join this very great, distinguished panelists to discuss very interesting topic, something I personally have at heart, because restoration is life, and especially in Africa, if we don't invest in the restoration, I think we are actually inheriting the next generation more challenges than solutions. I want to build on a couple of statements from my previous speakers. Mamadou mentioned about 126 million already under commitments from countries. My other colleagues, Josephine and Tabby, my friend Tabby, said communities they are the owners of land. They are core partners. They are custodian. They are knowledge holders. Already this makes communities actually more than just beneficiaries. And this is the first mistake we make when we are doing restoration. You just run into communities. And I worked for an organization before, and we used to be called the cars everywhere, because you take 5 cars in a community thinking you are bringing a solution in a suitcase. And actually the first risk there is to ignore that they are custodian of land, they are the owners of land, but also they own the knowledge in their local communities. So ignoring that is a big mistake. And this has been actually one of the biggest mistakes committed in the last years, and it has affected enough the sustainability of all what we have been doing in the humanitarian and development sector. For restoration, therefore, having communities as custodian of land, more than 80% of the 127 million is owned by smallholder farmers. Now, how do we ignore that big number and say that you're going to achieve this ambition? It's impossible. And therefore, I think, as you rightly mentioned, Salima, involving them in the planning and implementation is the right thing to do. And that's how we are going to transform this. And for a number of reasons. One, transformation starts with local communities for restoration. You are restoring land with them, and for their children. And therefore, there should be part of the planning. There have been a number of tools developed, and of course, we cannot ignore the contribution of the science that have also revealed quite a lot of benefits from restoration. But from a community engagement point of view, we have been working across more than 25 countries in Africa developing restoration opportunities assessment. And this has helped us to understand from our partners' point of view that most of land belongs to smallholder farmers. And therefore, after doing a national opportunities assessment, how do you translate that into actions at community level? We have been, personally, I've been working on and it's really interesting to see the results there, implementing what we call village land use action plans. So you take a national plan, you translate that into a community-based village level planning. This helps them to assess the problem, but also develop possible solutions to their land use, connecting the land use issues, the degradation issues, soil erosion issues, more importantly, agricultural productivity opportunities, and then from there, they're able to develop, communities are able to develop actions that will help them to restore their land. And I've been working on a project over the last 3 years, which actually helped me myself even change my mindset in terms of how we work with the communities. The local communities have huge knowledge. They know better than we know. And therefore, what we can do is to listen to them, planning with them, and then assist them technically to the implementation of their plan. And a couple of challenges, of course, to that whole process is undervaluing that knowledge. And sometimes communities feels like, yeah, we are actually saying yes, but we feel undervalued. I did an assessment recently, and 80% of communities felt like, yeah, we want to be more involved. And this was a call to action for partners, for scientists, for development partners, for financial partners, that we need to involve more communities in the planning and the implementation of landscape restoration. So from ROM, which is a restoration opportunities assessment methodology at a national level and subnational level, to a village land use or sub-county village action planning, to a community action implementation activities, can actually help transform our restoration plans.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Charles, for your honesty, because I think we'll often hear like the idea that technical partners have perfect ideas lined up, and you came and said communities knows best. We need to bring it back to the old school and sit under the baobab trees and listen from them and really try to learn as much as we can while tailoring it to the existing tools that we know. Thank you again, Charles, for these very insightful things. I want to wrap up this panel interventions before we open the Q&A, and we want to hear from you all participants. Tony, you are the face of FMNR. Your work has inspired many communities and researchers, including myself. And can you tell us what role does empowering local communities and stakeholders play in ensuring durability, ownership, change across restoration program? And these are roads that all the different panelists has used. What is your take on the role of empowering local communities? And what are some of the pending challenges and opportunities for this paradigm shift? Because it's more about, it's more than just activities. It's really shifting the paradigm and the mindsets. We'll love to hear from you, Tony.
Thank you, Salima, and it's a great pleasure to be with you and with my fellow panelists this evening for this very important webinar. As you know, I had the great privilege of living in your home country for 17 years, working very closely with local communities, and I'm convinced that the single most important step that we can take to ensure sustainability of restoration programs is actually empowering them. And I love what Charles said. It requires a certain amount of humility to be co-learners. That in itself is empowering. Empowerment motivates and energizes communities who, when you think about it, they're the key stakeholders. Ultimately, it's the community that determines the ongoing success or the failure of these programs. And in a nutshell, what is empowerment? It can include training and awareness creation. It can include giving them the decision-making power providing policy and practical support that enables them to protect, restore, maintain, and benefit, very important that they benefit from landscapes, and facilitation for market access. Empowering communities is important because they're the ones who live on the land. Their livelihoods, and very often their very life, depends on the health and the functioning of those landscapes. So when you think about it, they're highly motivated in this whole restoration paradigm. Because empowerment leverages on communities' self-interest, it's very, very powerful tool for the sustainable restoration of these landscapes. And additionally, I would just add, communities know what is happening and the impact of their actions. So they're actually the best place to be proactive in restoration, and they can be the first responders to threats such as wildfire or illegal logging. So incredibly important to empower communities. In terms of challenges, I would say at a national level, despite all the evidence, all the awareness on importance of empowerment, many governments, too many governments, are reluctant to hand over land and tree ownership, or at the very least, user rights. Sometimes even if they're willing to hand this over, just the sheer act of changing policies and laws can take an awful long time. Perhaps on a local level, sometimes powerful or wealthy individuals may channel the benefits of forest landscape restoration towards themselves. So it's extremely important to put in proper checks and balances. And then finally, perhaps other challenges at a local level: wildfire, livestock damage, illegal harvest. But generally, empowerment is the antidote to these issues. So thank you, Salima.
Tony, your words as inspiring as they've always been. Thank you so much. You've talked about humility, stakeholders being the definer of success or failure, but also ensuring that they have profits and they benefit from this. Thank you so much for all these valuable insights. And please, all five participants, stay here. All five panelists, stay here with us. We have some exciting questions from the audience. I will start with one question that I think can be triggering to all of us. Are there community-based work that are sustainably financially important, or are most of these community-led activities are donor dependent? So is it possible to do and to involve communities while being financially sustainable? Who wants to take that? I'll give it to Charles. Charles, can we start with you, and maybe we'll go to Mamadou?
Just in a few words, I think definitely they are sustainable community-led efforts. We have seen this, and it's very inspiring, especially in land restoration. I have a case of a very degraded area I visited 5 years ago in Uganda, northern Uganda, where shea butter was being transformed into charcoal, and actually that was the only value shea butter could give to the community. Everything was cut down. And after several empowerment, as Tony mentioned, after discussion and community engagement, community themselves developed a plan to protect and value the shea butter. Today, more than 5 community-led enterprise of adding value to shea butter has born from that community and is really generating significant amount of income. The landscape have transformed into a terribly, amazingly restored landscapes. So this is just one example, but we have quite some other several examples across the continent that really shows that community-led restoration efforts are sustainable. And I know Tabi is looking at me, and he has quite a lot of examples. And yeah, definitely I would confirm that. And there are several reasons we can learn from that whole process.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Tabi, can you just hold on? I want to hear from Mamadou, because Mamadou, you were the first one to say farmers are the #1 financiers. They are our private sector. Tell us more about it. Is it sustainably, yes. Is it financially sustainable?
Definitely, definitely. It is totally sustainable. And also because the format of these meetings, let me just go to the point to combine the Land Accelerator experience last year in Kenya, or not the year before. We always tend to skip 2020, it doesn't exist because of COVID. So 2019, the Land Accelerator session in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, and we had 10 young entrepreneurs in restoration and to pitch their ideas of business and how sustainable will it be to do as a business. And I have an example of a young Ghanaian restoration business entrepreneurs who he said that he heard for the first time post-harvest loss in agriculture, one hand, restoration in the other hand. Very quickly, he did not need nobody, no support, no finance, no technical partner, financial partner to bring money. He went to his community only around a radius of 10 kilometers to tell to the tomato producer. He started with tomato, now he's doing mango and others. He told them that I heard that you are losing your harvest, most of it, and it is called post-harvest loss in the thought world. And so let's cooperate. I take, once you are sure that this part will be lost, let me take it and then go dry it and make dried tomatoes in forms of powder or the whole fruit. And then we set up a value chain of that. And he hired some of his young colleagues also, women and men, to start a process of drying those tomatoes. And then they shared the benefits. And now he's really sustainable. And we have many other examples in other value chains. So yes, smallholder farmers, young women, youth, and can be sustainable. What we need is the expansion, the scaling up, and the support from SIDA to fund 100 young entrepreneurs in Africa on restoration is an example to follow. And I was telling to colleagues in the FA 100, GIZ and others that let's try to make it 10 million young entrepreneurs in 10 years. Thank you.
Yes, 1 million young entrepreneurs, farmers, stakeholders investing in Africa. Yes, Mamadou, yes, and amen to that. Can I maybe ask a question to Tabby and Tony, just picking on what Mamadou just said? We want to scale up these existing successes, but what are the risks of scaling too fast, too big, without including local communities? How do we scale up the existing efforts? How do we get to 100 million hectares while also keeping in mind communities' interests and benefits in mind? So, Tabby, I'll start with you and I'll revert to Tony.
Oh, thank you very much, Salima. Thank you, Mamadou. Thank you, Charles, for the earlier examples. And I was going to share just one very quick example first. It's very important that before I come to your question directly, to add to what Mamadou and Charles said, we started a project in Cameroon where a degraded land, completely degraded land of 80 kilometers was wiped, chopped down for forest logging and wood fetching. And we came into this forest and started restoring it with the indigenous fruit trees and different spices and different other, highly needed fruit trees, turmeric, ginger, we created a new biodiversity entirely. And surprisingly, for the past 6 years, this tree recorded 2 million trees. And 90% of these 2 million trees are all food, medicinal, cosmetic, and perhaps other, health-connected fruit trees. And surprisingly, again, no single dollar came from no agency, no government, no NGO. It was through sheer indigenous, community-led efforts and community effort entirely. And today, this forest employs 33 young people and women, and strikingly, quote unquote, 5 of them are young people who migrated to, they attempted migrating to Europe through the Sahara and Mediterranean, but they were stuck in Libya for 2 years. They are currently attracted by this project, and they are having their livelihood held through these restored forests. So these are very good examples in the community. The question now is, how did we go about getting this done? To the extent that the forest was restored, protected, sustained, and resourced to the extent that it creates both jobs and different social opportunities and environmental services, impacts that it is offering right now. So back to your question, the answer is that without communities, don't even think of any success. Because
I'll say a round of applause.
Good. It should be from community. Anything that you want to do for community should come from community. That means there should be that symbiotic understanding of what the communities need. And you are not coming in like a messiah, you're coming in like a supporter, because the community has something you don't have, and you have something the community doesn't have. So let's put together and have a common ground. Like Charles said, technical support might be one of them. So this is critically what we need. So any successful community project should take into consideration the total knowledge, potential, understanding, the sociology, the anthropology of the community has to be the main framework for developing in a community-led project. With this, I say, support also should come in. Not support that is coming, not support that is coming that is not community oriented. It should be all community oriented. I leave Tony to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just being mindful of time. I know we all have very busy schedule, and I don't want to abuse the participants' time. Tony, very quickly, can we hear from you? And I would love to shut one last question at all of you, one challenging question. So get ready for that. Tony, back to you.
Thank you, Salima. So personally, I wouldn't be too worried about going too fast. In 1980, average tree density on Niger farms was 4 trees per hectare. Within a decade in the Maradi district, the average tree density was 40. And over a 2-decade period, it spread to more than 5 million hectares. If you do the maths, that's 250,000 hectares per year for 20 years with virtually no external support. If there is a danger in going too quickly, I believe it's governments not being able to respond fast enough. But because this is community driven and the benefits are direct, more fodder, more fuel wood, more fertile soil, etc., I can't really see a danger in this going fast.
Amazing. You said it so right. We can't go too fast. It's important to our communities. It's one tree at a time, but Niger's example shows that it's possible at scale, that it's sustainable at scales, and most importantly, it is community driven. Thank you so much, Tony. I wanna wrap us up with one last question to all of you, and I would ask you, I know it's challenging, but I'll ask you to be as succinct as possible in your responses. From your own perspective and from your heart, I want this to come from your heart. What does roots to restoration means to you? What is the roots to restoration? What are these roots to restoration in your sense? I'll start maybe with you, Josephine. What is the roots to restoration in your mindset?
Yes, Arima, thank you. The roots to restoration in my mind, from my mindset, I think is the overall process, the overall thinking, the overall, how can I say it? From the setting, from local communities, land tenure, governance, finance, time, resources, till benefits at the end of the process. For me, that's just all The whole process of this is what we can call the roots of restoration. So we have to gather all the community from the small to the highest. We have to gather what we call governance, what we call land tenure, property right, agricultural right, forestry right, benefits, marginalized groups, all that we have to take everyone on the board so that we can have a wonderful benefits or success at the end of our process. For me, we have to gather everyone, to take everyone on the board.
Thank you.
Doing like that, you will succeed our efforts at the end of our process. Thank you, Salima.
Amazingly, as I said, you always speak from your heart, Josephine. Thank you for kicking us out. I'll go to you, Mamadou, next. What is the roots of restoration in your sense?
Yes, thank you, Salima. To me, doing restoration is like breeding, I would say, because as an African, even if you live in the cities, you always find yourself planting a tree, planting a little plant somewhere. It is from school, like even sometimes you walk to go and steal some fruits in the garden of the neighbor, and you find yourself dropping the seed and then planting and put a little water. So it is a natural gesture that we have. And also, I said it many times that we don't plant for the sake of just restoring or planting. It is, and you have all the benefits that come. We all spoke about it. That's how we know also Tony, since we were much younger, is to that it come naturally to contribute to food security, to nutrition. And yesterday, I'm currently in Conakry. Yesterday, I had the cassava leaves. It's almost only here that you can have it in Africa. So it is a natural process to contribute to food security for our people. Just that is enough. Now, the work, the cooperation is globally how to expand it and respecting our cultures, and but expand it so to have more of our people to come into it. And I take this opportunity to make some publicity advertisement. It will come into the GLF, the new documentary on AFR 100, the Grand African Green Up, and you will have many examples of what is the roots of restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamadou. What an amazing combo. Talking about land restoration and eating good cassava leaves. We are one jealous audience. Charles, very succinctly, what is the roots of restoration in your end?
I think from our everyday life, personally, I think it's time to actually make restoration part of our life. Restoration is life. Restoration is our food, our water, our fresh air, our well-being, our medicine. Restoration, let's make restoration life. Let's change mindset. Everywhere you are, think about, actually that's me. And whenever I go, whenever I travel, the first thing I do, I look at the landscape. And the first idea that comes in mind is the status, the vegetation cover, the soil erosion. Restoration is life. From a community to a development partner to an investor, let's make restoration part of our everyday living.
Amazing, Charles. Restoration is life. There should be a quote somewhere instilled, a poster in young communities. Tabi, I'll go next to you very quickly. What is the roots of restoration in your regards?
The roots of restoration, like Mamadou said, I want to connect to that, is looking at where we all come from. Each one of us come from one community somewhere that has one community, river, spring, forest, landscape, somewhere that has aided our health, aided our life. Let's just go back into looking back to these roots and seeing how we can restore them and create potentials for inclusive green growth, benefits, ecosystem services, opportunities for jobs for income and for livelihood and for resilience.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tabby. It's incredible. You guys are the roots of restoration. From the words you're sharing, it's really quite inspiring. Thank you. Tony, the last words. Let us, what is the roots? You've unveiled the roots with FMNR. So, but in your sense, what is the roots of restoration?
Thank you, Salima. I want to build on Josephine and Charles. Since the dawn of human history, humankind has been at war with nature. And only 5% of my job description involves the technical aspects of trees and landscape restoration. 95% involves mindset change. I call it regreening mindscapes. And if you win that battle, the rest flows naturally. Thank you.
Regreening mindscapes. What an amazing word. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you all panelists. Thank you so much for your amazing words, your greatness, and your availability to share all these amazing insights with the participants. Thank you, participants, for all your amazing comments. We have not been able to cover all of them, but we thank you and we'll make sure to cover them throughout this session and next sessions. Please remember a white paper is available on this topic that will be distributed by GIZ and GLF. But most importantly, stay here. We have a next session with Tony, the regreening our mindsets. We're going to continue this session with Tony and Irene. So don't leave. We are going to be next here in 10 minutes. So go get your coffee, go get some rest, but come back in 10 minutes because we want to continue this discussion with you. Thank you so much, all panelists. Thank you very much. And I wish you a really good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Salima.
Thank you.
My home is embattled by desertification and drought, migration and conflict. Restoring the land is a matter of survival. It's up to us to create an African dream.
We're talking about revitalizing the ecosystem, the economy of communities and villages. The future generation will hold us accountable.
If people can't work their land, millions across the region will be forced to migrate.
Le convoyeur va te donner à un autre convoyeur qui est déjà vendu à ce convoyeur sans te rendre compte. J'ai eu 4 amis qui ont pris la balle.
رأي كابتن جرين من بقول له زي زريا مدرش بعدنا نوصل عليه اجاكلنا بلوتاكين بيتشا
The Great Green Wall, it's not just about planting trees. It has to become a movement from the whole continent, from the whole world.
Good morning, good afternoon, bonjour à tous nos participants. Karibo to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us on this exciting discussion. Welcome to Releasing the Underground Forest. If you don't know what this means, then tune in. We are here to dig more on this notion. This session is hosted by GIZ in collaboration with World Vision. My name is Salima Mahmoudou. I am a Restoration Research Associate at the World Resources Institute, and I'll have the pleasure of being your moderator today. The world has experienced severe land degradation due to deforestation, climate change, droughts, desertification, and unsustainable land uses. But guess what? This is changing. Communities across the world are transforming their lives to ensure and reshaping their landscapes through a low-cost, simple, and sustainable land regeneration practice called FMNR. Farmers manage natural regeneration. Through FMNR and their own efforts, communities can restore degraded lands to productivity relatively quickly and simple and efficiently. FMNR has proven its potential in mobilizing and empowering local communities to restore their natural environment and consequently building resilience for people, for their lands and their livelihood. For this session, we'll have the honor of hearing from two great speakers, Tony Rinaldo and Irene, on the FMNR approaches at the global and Kenyan perspective. Tony Rinaldo, who is a World Vision Senior Climate Action, but is also the pioneer of this technique, FMNR, and Rights Livelihood Award laureate of 2018. Irene Ojoko is a PhD candidate at the Rights Livelihood College in the Center for Development Research and in development research, and is a global evergreening ambassador. Thank you so much, Tony and Irene, for joining us on this topic. But before we start, I would like to remind all the participants that today we want to hear from Tony and Irene, but we also want to hear from you. Make sure you use the Q&A and chat sections to share your reactions and thinking throughout this whole panel. We want to make sure we hear from you. And last but not least, translation is also available in French and English to accommodate with all participants. We will begin this session with a quick clip, a documentary trailer titled The Underground Forest.
Imagine. Trees could be growing on degraded land. Imagine. Desertification could be stopped. Hundreds of millions would not have to leave their homes. Imagine. All that is needed is still there, right beneath our feet. Imagine. A whole underground forest is waiting to emerge again. Desertification is advancing at an alarming pace. People have given up. They feel like helpless victims of climate change and poverty, whose only option seems to be migration. But there is hope. Australian agronomist and alternative Nobel Prize winner Tony Rinaldo discovered a simple technique, making global regreening possible. What looks like small shrubs and bushes are actually trees, waiting for the opportunity to grow, feeding on the enormous root system that is still intact. The pruning consists in reducing the number of stems so that they can grow straight and tall.
It's embarrassingly simple. People are expecting some big scientific explanation and complex machinery and all this kind of thing. It's embarrassingly simple, but I'm not ashamed because it works.
The farmers manage the pruning themselves.
Every 2 months, we do the pruning.
Word is spreading fast from Senegal to Somalia. In Niger alone, 6 million hectares of forest have already been restored.
You can visibly see the difference.
7% of the Earth's surface could become green again. 2 to 3 billion hectares of land, producing wood and food for hundreds of millions. And more importantly, giving people back their dignity.
But what I really see when I go back into the villages is the restoration of hope. And when you have hope, you can do anything. You believe in yourself, you believe in the future. The restoration of hope is the real gift.
Imagine we could spread this message around the globe and achieve restoration on an unprecedented scale.
I firmly believe that with the right production methods, Africa could easily feed the world.
The restoration of hope is the real gift. What an amazing trailer. Wow, inspiring. I'll pass it on to you, Tony. Tell us more about FMNR and this restoration of hope as featured in the trailer.
Thank you, Suleiman. It's so wonderful to be with you, partly because I left part of my heart in your home country, Niger, and it's good to be with you, and partly because I'm with Irene, who I have the greatest admiration for, particularly for the groundbreaking work that she's done in Kenya. So what is this FMNR beast? It's both a technical practice and it's a community development approach for mobilizing and empowering local communities to restore their natural environment. On the technical side, it involves the regrowth and management of existing trees, as you saw in the video, sometimes from stumps or roots or seeds already in the ground. And this regrowth is managed, selected, pruned, managed. So technically, it's a very, very simple process. Next slide, please. And you can see there the underground forest. Why does it have such enormous potential? If you're regrowing trees from stumps, they can grow very, very quickly because they have deep roots accessing water and nutrients. Next slide, please. So FMNR can be implemented as a standalone intervention, but it has its greatest impact when combined with other forest landscape restoration approaches, such as water harvesting or holistic grazing management or regenerative agricultural practices, along with economic and social empowerment interventions. So very important. Yes, we can do it alone, but it has its greatest impact combined with complementary activities. FMNR is linked to forest landscape restoration because of its scalability and its impact at the landscape level, environmentally, socially, and economically. And I won't go into the details of that, but it spans the whole spectrum of human and environmental behavior. Why is it significant? It's actually revolutionary when you think of the millions of dollars and the effort that went into pushing back the desert through tree planting in the 1970s. There's very little to show for those earlier efforts. And its simplicity, its low cost, and its high impact makes it readily accessible to land users, whether they be farmers or pastoralists or forest dwellers. And it doesn't create dependency on external funding or expertise, but it makes it possible for the spontaneous FMNR movement to be generated and for it to spread organically very, very rapidly, as we saw in Niger. So how does it differ to tree planting? Well, there's no actual planting involved. It relies on the regeneration of pre-existing trees and seeds already in the landscape. And so there's no necessary nursery, transport, or planting activity. However, FMNR and tree planting are very complementary. So on the one hand, tree planting can fill the gaps where regeneration isn't happening, or it can bring back species that might have disappeared, or highly valued species that aren't going to occur naturally for fodder, for fertilizer, for timber, whatever. Tree planting fills that critical gap. Then on the other hand, FMNR makes very rapid, scalable reforestation possible at quite low cost. So they're quite complementary. I'm not playing one against the other. How do communities implement FMNR? There's much I could say, but I'm just going to limit myself to 5 little headings. 1, awareness. Communities must understand the connection between their state of poverty and hunger and displacement. What's the link between that and land degradation? That's key, because when you know what the enemy is, you can begin to tackle it. Secondly, knowledge. What is this practice of FMNR? How do you do it? And why should I do it? How will I benefit? That's the next critical piece. Thirdly, favorable policies. In particular, providing either tree ownership or at the very least, user rights. And this is a form of empowerment. Such policies give communities the assurance that if they do this work, and they will be the primary actors, but if they do it, they will benefit. And then that ticks all the boxes for sustainability. If they're benefiting, it will continue with or without a project. Fourthly, governance. It is essential that communities create bylaws on the management of those trees, and that these laws have local support from authorities. And then finally, I've already touched on this, but benefits. Communities need to benefit from the fruit of their labor, or why should they do it? Why should they continue to do it? So just five very short points there that I'd like to make. In terms of momentum, and I've forgotten to progress the slides. Next slide, please. So it's gone to scale in Niger. In 1980, only 4 trees per hectare on farmland average. Next slide. Today, across more than 5 million hectares and perhaps even as much as 10 million hectares, average tree density in Niger is about 40 trees per hectare. Next slide, please. And so I just want to talk a little bit about the momentum of the movement globally. In the last decade, it's been quite exciting. Global awareness on FMNR and the adoption has accelerated. To our knowledge, either through introduction or spontaneous adoption, FMNR has been practiced in around 26 countries around the world, most of them in Africa, but not solely Africa. And a number of individuals, particularly Chris Ray, Dennis Garrity, Bob Winterbottom, have been drivers of this. A number of organizations, World Vision, World Resources Institute, Global Evergreening Alliance, your own institution, World Resources Institute, and GIZ have been drivers of this. And how have they done it? Through scientific publications and articles in popular journals, through training workshops, webinars, conferences, through advocacy to governments, to donors, and particularly through implementing actual projects. This has had an incredible impact in the last decade or so. So what we've seen very, very recently, FMNR has been endorsed, or at the very least recognized by the United Nations SDG platform, by the Food and Agriculture Organization, by the Trillion Tree Initiative, the Right Livelihoods Foundation, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, and the UN Decade of Restoration. So there's so many exciting things happening in a short space of time. But just to finish off, I don't want to lose sight of where the rubber hits the road. So despite all I've said, once there's awareness and once people are empowered at the community level, these are the primary drivers behind the FM&R movement that we're seeing globally. Thank you, Salima.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tony. I particularly got stuck on one phrase that you said. It's as simple, but I'm not ashamed because it works. And it's amazing the way that you said it spread throughout all these communities and regreening and healing people's hope of land and livelihood. Thank you so much, Tony. I want to move now to Irene. Irene, as I said, she's a PhD candidate, a Global Evergreening Alliance, and I must say, a growing FM&R guru. So Irene, tell us more of your experience of FM&R in the Kenyan context and give us some more insights of what does it look like on your end.
So taking it on from Tony, who is our champion, the biggest champion, our ambassador, we have to make this transformation happen on the ground. And there we come telling the Kenyan story. All the way from Niger, Kenya got wind of this approach in 2012. But why does it become relevant for Kenya? The land degradation problem is everyone's concerned. It's the matter on the table, both from development agencies, from governments, from communities. And the main question is, how do we solve this issue? Kenya is losing about $390 million US every year. This is according to an IMF report, to land degradation. Now, this needs to make us really uncomfortable. And what makes it even more challenging is that our land is largely ASAL, that is arid and semi-arid lands. And we have committed 5.1 million hectares to be restored by 2030. How do we go about this? Yet the tree survival in the drylands is less than 30%. How do you convince a farmer to plant trees in a context like Niger? Tony had the experience moving with pickups, trying to carry seedlings in a very challenging context. Tree planting is about $1,500 US per hectare. Which poor farmer can invest in this business? It's almost impossible. We want our farmers to smile. We want our farmers to get their drylands more productive than they are today. Next slide. So what is at stake? How do you begin a conversation on restoring degraded landscapes? We need to appreciate what is happening today. When you step out of the many issues that are going around globally, go down to your village, go down to the drylands, then you understand the challenge of restoration. You find total frustration. People are migrating. Women don't even know what children are going to eat in the evening. They don't go to school. The young people who need to be supporting development initiatives are looking for guns. Why are they looking for guns? To protect the natural resources or to find ways of ensuring their livestock can get pasture. We are having very toxic societies. We are having frustrated people. We are bringing up a generation of people who do not even have options. They are really devastated. Next. Next slide. So then the transformative benefit of FM&R presents an opportunity in this context. Many people do not want to invest in what does not have returns. And we all know that we work so hard and you don't want to put your money into something that will not give you returns. Farmers are in very challenging contexts. Climate change, limited resources, and all the other factors that strain them do not give them space to try out innovations that never have results. So you go into a context as a development agency or a researcher, and you come up with an idea and you think this idea will work out because it has worked out in another context. It does not work that way. farmers want to see results, and they want to see results in a short time. So for something to happen, if we are going to scale restoration, it must be results driven. It must be at the center of the interest of the farmers. It must address the needs of both men and women. So what do women need in a restored landscape? Firewood is very essential for women to ensure that they take care of their reproductive roles in the households. Men need to have pasture consistently. Now, when you address these issues, you are able to get communities in the momentum to restoration and underline the fact that we need quick results. We need to see change within a short time. Now, tree planting gives almost uncertain results in contexts like Marsabit in Kenya. The picture you see that has the 6 months change is one of the stories that have made Marsabit one of the best counties where we are seeing transformation in FMNR in Kenya. Now, this is a county where we introduced FMNR. It's barely 4 years now, yet it is driving a restoration campaign in the country that is questioning everyone who has imagined nothing can come out of a context like Marsabit. And the most inspiring story about this is that women are at the forefront and are driving this agenda. And I can tell you that women have brought men in the restoration conversation because men are seeing results in contexts that they have previously given up on. Now, that tells you that FMNR brings households together. FMNR demystifies the gender problem. FMNR bridges the gap between men and women, and it provides an opportunity where men and women issues are addressed in a more sustainable, holistic perspective. Next slide. So, which is the deal? When you talk about restoration and everyone is coming up with options, this is going to give you this kind of results. We have seen in Kenya that really this is the deal. And when you hear that we now have about 15 counties adopting FMNR as an alternative to, or an integrated approach to land restoration, it's because of the opportunities that are presented through this. You don't need a donor to come into your context to tell you or to influence you to apply the results that you can see in this picture. The business perspective is very essential. Restoration can only be sustainable when there is the economic incentive, when it is resilient to climate change, when it brings smiles to women, men, and children, when it ensures that food security is addressed, when it ensures that we have pasture in our lands. Next slide. Next slide. So women in the power of FMNR. Today we see a lot of young people taking very nice pictures and putting on Instagram and Facebook. We are all slaying with green vegetation or nice buildings. But I love this lady, Ruth, on my left, because she's slaying with a hoe. You know, we need young people to dare restoration. We need young people to slay with restoration. We want young people who can tell the restoration story. And this can only happen when we have a connection between the young girls and their mothers. And we see a context where girls are teaching their mothers restoration. I admire this lady and I challenge our young people. We are not limited. We are actually having a lot of opportunities. You don't need to find land to plant a tree. You can regenerate trees within the context that exists. No one will stop you from doing that. You can teach people. You want to inherit land that is productive, not unproductive land. So even as we wait for the challenges of land tenure systems to be in place, can we make land available? Can we make land more productive? There are so many benefits. You know, we have acacia species with the gums and resins. We have the pods. We have firewood. Women have to smile, and women are always at the forefront of working on land. They have the power to decide whether to degrade landscapes or to restore. Next slide. So I conclude with the FMNR story. Where do we move from here? We have to link generations. Whenever we begin the FMNR journey, we have to reflect. We think about our past. Where have we come from? What don't we have that we used to have? What do we want for our future? And what can we do? Now, our young people can only restore what they understand. If we lose on indigenous knowledge that exists in our context, especially as regards land restoration, there is no future in the land restoration agenda. We must invest in indigenous knowledge. We must link generations. We have to tell the young children why our grandparents restored, why they took care of these trees, what benefits came from it, what attachment exists. And you know, when you regreen hearts and minds, that is the real pathway to regreening landscapes. When my heart is transformed, when my heart is touched, when my mind is transformed, that is the only way I can be attached and sustainably participate in restoration. Thank you. I want to now give us an opportunity to listen to the farmers tell the story of restoration. What makes them apply these models? What makes them feel connected and sustained in this business?
Thank you so much, Irene. As you mentioned, before we dive into the Q&A session, we'll like to share a second video, Farmers' Voices, from a BMZ-funded FMNR educational video. So if we can play that, then we can go directly into the questions and get insights from the participants.
Every 2 months, we do the pruning. This one is now about 3 years old now.
Wanda ya yaki da hamada. Wannan lasara sai muna ce masa ana ce mai tuni. To da wannan lasara ya zo ya ce shi zai yaki da hamada in mun kama mai. Sai muna mamaki ya za a yi kokowa da hamada ba mu da ice kuma ga iska ya zo. Sai ya ce insha Allah da dabarun da za.
Incredible. Farmers' Voices, the face of restoration. Thank you so much, Irene and Tony, for your heartfelt intervention. And what I heard about what you've said is that you haven't talked about the technique, the scientific, you talked about the people. The people and the hearts, bringing back the heart, the smile and hope back into this community. We have a lot of questions in the chat, and thank you so much for all the participants. I'll start with a question that I think could really get us to set the stage for more a detailed question. Someone said, Tony and Irene, you stress the low cost and locally driven approach, which is great. But how could development finance support this process? Since funding is not the key issue, is it best to support the FMNR through NGOs, or could it also be through a government pathway? So maybe Tony, I'll give you this answer, and then I would love to also hear from Irene. Is funding the issue? Is development finance even needed? If not, what should development partners focus on, and where should the entry points be? Is it NGOs or is it government entities?
Thank you, Salima. So FMNR is low cost, but introducing it is not no cost. It still costs something to get the information out there, to train, to mobilize, to create that favorable policy environment that might require advocacy, exchange visits for policymakers, and so on. So yes, definitely lower cost than other methods, but it's not no cost. Is it best to go through NGOs or government rather than pitching one against the other? I would say both and. NGOs play such an incredible role because they're there at the community level. They build trust. They have this relationship that they can work very, very closely with communities. However, the best programs work hand in glove with government. Imagine if you have government support for what you're teaching, government encouragement, and the line services, forestry, agriculture, environment, if they're reinforcing the message, perhaps occasionally giving prizes or acknowledgement for a certain community's efforts, this is so much more powerful. And I keep coming back to that key issue. I noticed there's one question. What does this mean, tree ownership? In countries like Niger, for example, even on your own farmland, in the past, you did not own the trees. And technically, you could be fined or, at worst, imprisoned for cutting down a tree on your own land. So governments play an extremely important role in creating a favorable policy environment where people now have that liberty. It's in my best interest to manage and benefit from this tree in a sustainable way. So definitely funding for both NGO and government. We're not pitched against each other.
Amazing, Tony. It's a team effort and all actors have their role into this process. Irene, what's your take on this? Where should we start and how can development partners support FMNR's growth and spread across African landscapes?
Yeah, so I also totally agree with Tony. It's joint effort. You can never work in a context without the government. All development agencies work with government in the interest of the government's agendas and priorities. So the development agencies do not isolate their own issues. They are working in the interest of government. So it's working together. That's first very important thing to note. And even in the implementation, organizations never work alone. They work with the Kenya Forest Service, they work with the Ministry of Agriculture because you're working on farmlands. How do you ensure that the approaches that are coming on board are integrated within the agricultural systems to increase productivity? Development agencies need to find the opportunities to accelerate restoration. And for me, I always feel that we isolate restoration issues to more environment-related agencies, yet it affects all the development aspects that we have to get delivered in certain contexts. So I feel it is very fundamental for us to integrate the development agendas that we have as development agencies in wherever we are working to ensure that we look at development holistically. So holistically means when you are coming in a context and you find that there is hunger, do not look at agriculture in isolation of the problem, the longer problem that is brought about by agriculture. When you are distributing food in a refugee context, do not look at this problem as a problem that you just want to give food and then you leave, come back and continue giving food. We need to look at issues holistically and support the communities in a holistic perspective to address their issues today and for the future so that we move away from dependency. The money that comes from donors should actually stimulate or facilitate a development in a way that ensures that the people are woken up and are incentivized to start something which can support them beyond the funding. So I see opportunities, for instance, in restoration where we have a more business-driven model. More finances should even go into nature-based enterprises that influence people to increase the tree cover on farms so that they are able to get the multiple benefits that give them income, because money is the issue in the household. If I am not going to get the money I need to buy food and all the things I need, I will definitely destroy the landscape. So we need to find ways of ensuring that we incentivize households, we incentivize communities to intensify restoration so that it moves away from dependency on donor funds or external support. The low-cost approach addresses the immediate needs. So for you to get firewood at household, for you to get honey within your small farm, you don't need external funding to do that. But for us to move it to scale, you need to get people mobilized. So then you need funding to get people mobilized together to start up value chains and enterprises that are going to stimulate production, that are going to invite private sector and ensure that we scale out.
Thank you so much, Tony. Oh, it looks like Tony wanted to say, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to do anything. I'm in agreement with what Irene is saying. Thank you.
Amazing. And what I'm hearing from you all is that it needs to be centered around the needs of the local communities, while also being honest that these communities will need alternative means to allow the land to heal, to allow the land to regenerate, while also mentioning that development agencies can work with different entities, not just NGOs, but also governments, really in activating the potential. I love that you said it. It's activating what is already there for scale. While you, Tony, and Irene was presenting, a poll has been shared with the different participants asking them if they've ever used FMNR. And the results shows that close to 82% of the people who have responded never worked or never tried FMNR approaches, and only 18% did it. But yet it's such an amazing technique. What do you think are the challenges when it comes to FMNR, and what do we need to tell these 82 participants that have not tried it yet to encourage them to try it? So what are the challenges, and what should you say to anybody interested in building or learning more about FMNR?
Maybe I start and Irene can fill in the gaps. So the challenges, it depends, are we talking in the target country or in developing countries? And I think a common denominator is actually mindset. And so in the target countries, generally speaking, people are at war with nature, with trees. They see them as the enemy. And the objective of a good FMNR project or forest landscape restoration projects is to turn enemies into friends and to demonstrate that by working with nature, it will give us so much more than by fighting it and destroying it. So mindset change. And the same occurs in your audience, many of whom are in developed countries. Some may not have been aware of this method. Some are aware of it, but very often I find it's almost too good to be true. It seems unbelievable. And so I would say at least investigate it and give it a try. And very often in life, the best solutions are the simplest. You know, and I struggled for many years. I was trying so many methods, technologies, costly approaches, and it was such a revelation to see actually the solution was literally at my feet. So again, mindset change, broaden your mind to be open to working with nature and to look at what otherwise might be very obvious, but it's hidden in plain sight. And another obstacle is policy. And so many governments, in an effort to protect the landscape and vegetation, they create this regulation that the trees belong to the government or they're protected by the government. So very well-intentioned policy, but it's perverse because the result is the exact opposite to that what they want. And poor people, desperate people will do anything they can in order to survive. And I say, hand on heart, if you want to keep the forest, if you want to maintain your landscapes in a healthy state, give it to the people. At the same time, I'll turn to the community and say, if you want the government to entrust this resource to you, let's learn together how to manage it sustainably. Definitely benefit, but let's learn together how to manage it sustainably.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much, Tony.
I could add something. We are unfortunately cultured to believe that tree planting is the way to restore landscapes. So everyone speaks about tree planting, including governments. Even in this forum, I started listening to conversations yesterday. Whenever you think about restoration, tree planting, tree planting. So we have to deal with something in our brains that tells us that it's only when you plant trees that you can have trees. So we have to, it's a war, it's a psychological war that we have to fight. That is number one. I had to, the first time I met this approach, it has changed my life completely. I did my environmental studies at bachelor's, and I never heard about natural regeneration. I never heard about it as a potential on farmland. So I get to know this in 2014, and it has totally changed my mindset. And since then, I am pro natural regeneration than tree planting, unfortunately. And I also want to say that some of the agricultural practices threaten FMNR uptake, because when you go into a farmland and you believe that you have to clear everything, so people come with tractors in the interest of addressing the food security issue, you go in with tractors and you take away the roots and the stumps and every young tree that exists. This becomes a threat to the potential for regeneration. So it needs some deliberate effort by the farmers to identify, and it can only happen when they are empowered. So when they know that there actually exists a potential here that is more than just tree planting, because most of the time they remove all the trees that exist, then they bring new trees. Then the new trees fail one or twice, first time, second time, and they give up on it, and then they remain finishing their land on just growing crops and soil infertility, and they give up and go into the forest and start fighting with government. So the agricultural practices need to be relooked. Number two, I also think that the business environment sometimes becomes a challenge, because the incentive for nature-based enterprises can bar uptake, because I can regenerate my 10 acres of land. I expect a good policy or business environment to sell acacia, the gums and resins. Then there are so many brokers in between here that actually demotivate the grassroots farmers into production of gums and resins. They definitely go into charcoal production. So we need a business environment that empowers the actual farmers who are in the production of the non-wood and timber forest products.
Amazing. So what I'm hearing from you is beyond the political enabling environment, we need to think about the other enabling environments and factors that could encourage or create failure to all these FMNR. So it's not just at the growing, but it's also the whole value chain of how does that happen? How does the human? But you've also mentioned the really great point of tree planting. We always think of restoration as tree planting. And if there's one thing you should take out from this session is that tree planting is not the only options. And actually FMNR is a better option in some cases because it's low cost, it's more effective in some areas. But as Tony reminded us at the beginning, it's not one or the other. We need to think of a combined efforts and different techniques that can help regreen. In the comments, we had a lot of questions about research, the research gaps. So it seems that there's already a lot of information on FMNR. It seems to be already set technique and methods. But what are some other aspects? What are some existing research gaps that needs to be tailored? And that needs to be researched more. In the comments we heard, are they sufficient research on drought resistant tree species? Has the cultural tissue been evaluated if we want to make this at scale and a faster? Has the cultural tissue been evaluated to allow that? So in your regards, what is the research gaps, existing research gaps that researchers can focus on to really complement FMNR and ensure that it's being scaled, but also done effectively?
Like me to start? So, yeah, research has lagged behind, and the papers that are available, they've been produced relatively recently, in the last 5 to 10 years only. I would say there are still gaps in quantitative data. If I leave trees on my property, exactly how much increase in yield or in fodder or in livestock production can I expect? Which trees? What density? What degree of pruning and management? So these questions haven't been completely answered. We have guidelines, we have qualitative information, but yeah, I think there's a big gap in this area. Something that's been dogging us for a long time, when you plant trees, you can geotag that tree and you know exactly where it is and you can monitor your progress. When you talk about FMNR, you've released an idea and you have no control where it goes. So up until this point, it's been almost impossible to track the spread and the impact of FMNR. But I'm very happy to say that's changing very rapidly, and there's various organizations working on using satellite imagery and machine learning to track the progress in lifetime. I'm sure Irene has a number of gaps to identify as well.
Yeah, I'm doing my studies in this. So one of the things I also think should be explored further is on the potential of FMNR to address the biodiversity challenges. So there's great potential in the indigenous tree regeneration through FMNR, but to what extent does it address the biodiversity challenges we have today? How much, insects are we getting back? How much birds are coming back? We need that kind of data. We also need to find out to what extent FMNR addresses the gender differentiated, the gender issues at household. So we have a lot of studies done on agroforestry and gender and all, tree planting, all this environment and agriculture, studies on around gender issues. But FMNR presents something slightly different, which I think should be of interest for researchers to understand. So what are the gender differentiated drivers for adoption? What bars or what drives women? And the context is very important. We should not assume that what drove Niger to get to where it is definitely what will drive Kenya to get to Niger. So we have a lot of studies done, but most of them have been done in West Africa. We have FMNR in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Ghana, and many other countries. We need more context-specific studies for the context, because FMNR provides opportunities for adaptation. It does not come with its own package where you have to follow what, the farmer has the opportunity. The farmer is the manager. The farmer decides how many trees do I want, to what size, what extent. That's very important. The issue again on soils, to what extent does it address soil fertility? Studies have been done, but not much have been done. So how much carbon does FMNR capture? How much does it transform the soil characteristics? If you're talking about soil fertility, to what extent is it, balancing the question of production, crop production versus the trees on farm? So this is just some ideas that people could think about.
Thank you so much, Irene. So a lot of different research opportunities to really unlock the full potential of FMNR, but understanding its impacts on people, on land, and really extending it to other sectors to amplify its value added to communities. We're running a little bit short on time, but it looks like I heard, rumor has it that there is an educational film on FMNR being developed. Tony, can you tell us a bit more on that to get all the different participants excited about this educational film on FMNR?
Certainly. So it's actually completed, and I believe it's available. I don't have the details, but I believe it's available, and I hope somebody from our sponsors, GIZ, can perhaps put a note in the comment box. Basically, it's a synthesis of a live FMNR workshop. The film was made in India, but the principles of FMNR are applicable worldwide, and it goes through what are the constraints, what's the definition of FMNR, how do you mobilize communities, and so on and so forth. So I highly recommend looking that video up. Unfortunately, I can't tell you offhand where to find it right now, but it is complete.
Excellent. Well, we will make sure to drop a link for all the participants, especially those 82% that haven't started working on FMNR. We want you to start working on FMNR. And I hope that Tony's insights, Irene's insights, and these two clips that have been shown will motivate you to invest more into FMNR, but simply giving the power to communities to heal their land. So thank you so much. There's a white paper available on this topic, giving you more insights and really allowing you to dig more into these topics. A big thank you to you, Tony. A big thank you to Irene, to World Vision, and to GIZ for this session. And most importantly, thank you for all of you who have tuned in and asked us all these amazing questions. The last question for all of you that I'm gonna leave the participant is, would you use FMNR after this session? And I hope the answer is yes. Thank you so much, and we look forward to see you throughout this day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.